see the economy.
Very good evening to you, our dear viewers. Thank you for staying tuned on Rest TV. I'm Jackie Lingla, ready to dive you through the economy of Uganda here on the Financial Eye that airs every Monday at 8 p.m. Where we focus mainly on the economic and financial aspects so that we can enlighten you of what you need to know about finance. Now today we are going to discuss mainly on a critical initiative, that is the vision, the national vision of Uganda 2040, which was launched on the 2013 by the president himself. And of course, this was a roadmap, a development plan, a 30-year development plan strategized to make sure that Uganda moves or transforms from a peasant economy to a modern and prosperous country. Now joining me, I have the State Minister for Finance, the one who is in charge of planning from Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, Honorable Amos Lugolobi. You're very welcome, sir.
Thank you, Madam Jackie. I'm indeed pleased to be here this evening on this program called The Financial Eye. My name is Amos Lugolobi. I'm privileged to be the Minister of State for Finance, Planning and Economic Development in charge of planning. I'm also the Member of Parliament and Tenjero North constituency in Kayunga. I'm also privileged to have been one of those people that formulated the national vision when I was working with the National Planning Authority as the Deputy Executive Director, and at the time I was actually the Acting Executive Director, and we are responsible then for developing the comprehensive national development planning framework, which comprises various instruments, among which is the National Vision 2040 that we are discussing this evening.
So right now, Honorable, could you just take us through the Vision 2040? We know that literally, of course, many Ugandans know that this was a 30-year strategic plan to transform the economy to a middle-income economy. But what does it mean? What is the Vision 2040?
Well, I'll start from the term vision. Vision is simply like a dream. You sit down and dream of what you aspire to be. You know, when we sat down, all of us, because a vision must be a shared vision, it's a shared dream of the nation, largely inspired by the head of state. You know, he aspires to become a prosperous society from a peasantry society. We're a peasantry society because we largely deal in agricultural production, which is largely for subsistence. Whatever we do, even beyond agriculture, we are doing just simply to survive. Largely our population is tuned just to do that. Now, we are now aspiring in this vision to move from being peasants, people who just subsist in doing something just for the sake of feeding ourselves, into a society that is ready to stand strong, resilient enough financially, economically, and socially. You know, a society that is educated, a society that is employed and earning good income, a society that is productive, a society that knows all aspects of a prosperous society. Like we look at countries like Britain, Germany, France, you know, this is what we are trying to aspire. Of course, we cannot be a fully developed country by 2040, like the vision is aspiring to be. We are simply saying that we shall get there. We shall become a developed country. But in the 2040 vision, we are saying we shall be a middle-income country, somewhere there in the middle, a rich country, but not fully integrated and not fully developed. So within the vision, There are various aspirations that we talk about.
Okay, now when you talk about aspirations, could you take us through the implementation process from the time of the launch so far up to date? What has been done for us to know that at least we are moving into the intended outcome of this vision?
Thank you very much. Now, you see, when you dream, you have to develop a framework for realizing that dream.
Okay.
You know, we have said that our dream is to move from a peasantry society to become a prosperous society.
Okay.
Prosperous, we need to be equivalent to a middle income society.
Okay.
You know, earning, you see there is lower middle income and there is the upper middle income. Okay. So we should be earning at least, each one of us in Uganda, per capita income, we should be well over $2,000,
okay,
you know, per annum. So all of us on average, we should go beyond that. Now, to achieve that, we have to put in place a framework. And what we did in this vision is to develop a framework that comprises the key instruments for delivering that vision.
Okay.
And one of those key instruments, chief among them, is the National Development Plan.
Okay.
We said that we need to break down these 30 years into 6 national development plans. In other words, we said we shall have the first national development plan, that is the first 5 years. Then after the 5 years, we develop another national development plan to build on the achievements of the first national development plan.
So in
then we do the
there
third,
are 5, there are 6.
Yes, and then the 6th is when we achieve the 30 years of the plan in 2040. This vision started in 2011, the implementation of this vision, through these various national development plans. Where we are today, we are now beginning the implementation this coming financial year, which begins in July 2025. We are beginning the implementation of the 4th National Development Plan. We have just completed the 3rd National Development Plan. You did ask, what achievements there so far? You know, we have achieved quite a lot. One of the key tenets of the national vision is to maintain peace and security and stability of the country. Peace, I think everybody can testify that we have been a peaceful and stable country. We have been able to maintain the security of this country. And that doesn't come for granted. We as a country have to invest very heavily in terms of our security. The army that helps to maintain this stability, both nationally and regionally and internationally. We have the police, it has to be at its best. All these constitute enormous expenditure for the country to make sure that you don't end up in a situation like when you see the army taking over government. You know, Uganda has maintained full stability over these years. I think everybody can testify that Ugandan army is one of the most disciplined and the most professional army, and that comes at a cost. Secondly, this country did not have any infrastructure to speak of. As we talk today, the country is fully connected on almost all the international roads, trunk roads, connecting with our neighbors. Whether you are going to Goma, I mean, whether you are going to the border with Congo, whether you are going to the border with Rwanda, Kenya, Tanzania, you know, all these roads have been well built and well connected. And trucks moving goods, cargo, you know, are being able to move. Cargo, I mean trucks collecting cargo from villages, collecting our bananas, coffee, everything produced in the countryside can now be delivered to its destinations. So, and that's about infrastructure. You know, we're talking about infrastructure, we are not talking about roads alone. We are talking about rail as well. We are talking about airports. The airport has been fully built You know, you are now talking about a modern airport, international airlines landing there day and night. You know, we even have Uganda'S now fully operational and is now connected from here to Gatwick in London. You know, so we have established all these, and all these are part of our vision. You know, so anybody can move to any destination without any hindrance in terms of infrastructure. We have infrastructure in terms of energy development. You know, in 2010, we are talking about load shedding. Today, we are talking in terms of surplus, in terms of energy supply. You know, we have all the energy we need. We are even exporting some of the energy that we are producing. Dams like Karuma, Isimba, Bujagari, this other, what was called Owen Falls, you know, they have all been built, and new ones, many new ones have also, smaller ones, are being built. Solar energy is being generated. So, and when it comes to social infrastructure, education and health, in health, a number of hospitals, regional referrals have been built, health centers through programs like UGIFT have been built, schools have been built, seed secondary schools, to enhance access. You know, in terms of social services, again, we are talking about things like sanitation, water, provision of water. Access to clean water has been greatly enhanced, because you cannot talk about a healthy society without water and sanitation. Then you talk about agro-industrialization, agriculture. Our exports have grown tremendously. They're now into billions, over $8 billion, you know. So we have been generally able to balance our, the balance of payments, statement. You know, we are able to export, we are able to import without any problems. And we have maintained good reserves within the central bank. So we have been talking about peace and stability, at the same time a stable economy, macroeconomic stability. The shilling has not been shaking. The exchange rate has been, you know, stable over the years. You know, today we have been talking about a dollar for 3,650, 3,690, and it has been hovering around that for such a very long time. And today, in the mining industry, we are talking about oil and gas production. You know, the country is producing very soon oil and gas. Investment is going in, and we are experiencing heavy inflow of foreign direct investment into the country. That is helping to put a lot of pressure now on the shilling itself to remain, you know, where it is. Because now we are struggling with an appreciating shilling. You used to suffer a depreciating shilling. Now we are talking about an appreciating shilling, you know, fighting with the dollar, because we are experiencing a lot of inflows of dollars. So there is a lot to talk about in terms of the delivery of our national vision, buoyed by the stability, the economic and the political stability the country has enjoyed for a long period of time.
Okay. One of the key aspects that was cited when you were drafting the National Development Plan is to ensure that at least the economy has 100% financial inclusion.
Yes.
Yes. So how is this being put in place practically? What strategies has the Finance Ministry put in place to ensure this is achieved?
Okay. Now, you see, financial inclusion, we are trying to make sure that everybody participates in the money economy.
Okay.
You know, previously, when you talk about percentage of the population, a couple of years ago, 68% of our population were not into the money economy. They were simply producing just for food consumption. They would not go out to buy, even garments, you know, they would not buy. You know, they were not active. They are not seen buying anything in the supermarkets, in the shops, because they are poor, they don't have money. You know, whatever they are producing is just for their own consumption. They don't have what we call the surplus which should not be necessarily a surplus, they were not commercially producing.
Okay.
You know? So 68%. Now, recent surveys, particularly the census, has established that this population that is still in subsistence is at 33.1%. So it drastically reduced from 68% to 33.1%. But that's not the desirable situation. We should not totally eradicate these people who simply produce for subsistence, their own consumption. You know, we should have a society that is capable of producing. Everybody should participate, you know, because we are not running a welfare economy that if you don't participate in any economic activity, someone, you know, will be giving you what to eat. That doesn't happen in Uganda. You have to fend for yourself to survive. You know, to buy clothing for yourself, to pay school fees where necessary, to pay for your health where necessary, etc., etc. Now, we have launched numerous programs. First, we established a microfinance support center to support the ordinary people through circles. We would encourage people to form circles, and then they are lent money at a very minimum interest rate. You know, I think it was at about 8%, to enhance access to money to facilitate societal transformation. You know, someone to be able to do something. Then from establishing a microfinance center, we established different programs like Emyoga programs. We did have about 18 interventions where we expect society to participate. Like we have our society participating in border operations. There are those with saloons, etc. There are those involved in other things like agriculture, etc. So these so-called Emyoga program, people would form associations at the constituency level, you know, and then at that level they form what we call Omoga, say Omoga of border. Then they can go and borrow money, you know, from the Emyoga program at the district. And then they own lend that money amongst the members. If you want to buy a border to operate, you benefit, you return the money, and the money keeps revolving within this circle. As if that was not enough, we went further to create the PDM, the Parish Development Model program. Actually, it emerged out of what we had, the PCA, Parish Community Associations, that used to operate like associations at the parish level, you know, that we are running a revolving fund coming from the government. Now in the PDM, it is a fund, you know, which government has created. Now, there are people whom we call beneficiaries at the village level, you know, who form groups, different groups, based on the enterprises. We call these enterprise groups. For example, people growing coffee can form an enterprise group in a village. Then these go to the parish, you know. Now, these coming from various villages and converge at the parish form a circle that is involved in various enterprise groups. You know, at the parish, these people then receive 100 million shillings per year. So this money is sent by the government, you know, to the parish, and it's never to come back to the government. But it remains at the parish level, whose beneficiaries are the circle members within the parish. And that circle is formed by these different enterprise groups. There could be an enterprise in potatoes. There could be another enterprise producing something else other than coffee, you know, like bananas, like livestock, piggery. You know, they converge at the parish and get 100 million shillings annually. For the last, I think we are getting into the third year, they have been receiving 300 million shillings. Yeah.
Okay.
So very soon we should be talking about 300 million shillings available at each parish in Uganda.
Wow.
This is intended to facilitate financial inclusion of those people that would ordinarily be left behind.
Okay.
Now they have an opportunity to go into their circle and borrow money, you know, and that money carries some small interest, you know, and that small interest is purposely to keep the fund growing in value, you know, so that it doesn't lose value. You know, money over time loses value.
Yeah.
So you pay back an interest, maybe about 6%, you know, when you return the money. But that is very low. So you expect it to go back, maintain your coffee well, give it fertilizer, you know. You're allowed to take a maximum of 1 million shillings each beneficiary. So many people have taken this 1 million and it has transformed them. You know, you find a villager just looking for 100,000 shillings to be able to start something, you know. But here they are now, earning 1 million shillings. So we hope this financial inclusion is going to further strengthen this economy. How does it strengthen the economy? Because more and more people are within the money economy. They are able to buy goods and services. And when they buy goods and services, that purchasing power becomes a stimulant for producers to supply what these people are demanding. A producer of soap will find the demand for soap growing. A producer for uniforms will find the demand for uniforms growing. Whatever you're producing, because the purchasing power is growing, you know, pushed by, you know, the financial inclusion, the growing financial inclusion, that then spurs growth in the economy. And it's not surprising that the Ugandan economy is now growing beyond 6%. You know, we report a growth of 6.2%. We had gone down to 3% during the COVID period. Now we are growing at 6.2%. Now we have formulated a 10-fold growth strategy. And that is intended to grow this economy 10 times through what? Largely boosted by value addition. Because whereas we have done a lot in terms of production, we have so far not done enough in terms of adding value to what we produce. When I talk about value addition, I even include services like tourism. Have we developed enough tourism products? Do we have enough good hotels in this country to attract these rich tourists? You know, the people who spend a lot more money, you know, are we capable of attracting them? Do we have enough capacity? Value addition also in terms of what we produce in agriculture. Coffee, we're exporting coffee in a raw form. Milk, we have hitherto not even been exporting milk. Now we are adding value on milk. We are producing powdered milk, long life milk, you know, and we are exporting all this across the region. We are producing a variety of products. Science, technology, innovation, which we aspired in the vision, is happening. Now we are even producing automobiles and very exciting products that you could not think about previously are now being produced in the country. So it takes a lot of science and innovation to produce this product. Our universities are doing a lot of research work and development, developing new, you know, products, which they put on the market. So a lot really is happening in those structures that you see across the country, those warehouses. People are really producing products that you could never have thought about before. So, and that is a journey of transformation that is happening as a result of doing our aspiration in the Vision 2040. So the 10-fold strategy is intended that by the time we get to 2040, whatever we are not able to do previously, we catch up using the 10-fold strategy.
Now,
So
just
tenfold, let me complete this, means that whereas our GDP, I think about 2 years ago, was at $50 billion, we want this GDP to be $500 billion by 2040.
Okay. Of course, for us to achieve the vision, there are various key players in the whole plan. So we have stakeholders, such as the civil society, we have the private sector, we have the development partners. How has the ministry engaged these key players as they're implementing the plan?
Yeah, well, we need all these key stakeholders. And one of our key stakeholders is the private sector. And we always say that the private sector is the engine of growth. For us, we create the enabling environment. We do the roads, we provide the power, we provide all those key enablers, the schools, just name it. And we provide this enabling environment to be able to attract the private sector. They need to pick all these signals that we are sending out. So that is the first stakeholder, because they are the ones who set up the investment, they are the ones who produce, they are the ones who go to the market to get the money that we are talking about. When we talk about foreign exchange, it's largely coming through this private sector, through our labor, the citizens of Uganda. You see people traveling from here to go abroad and look for money, So we end up with these foreign remittances, inflows, actually, coming here from those people who work from abroad. Over $1 billion we receive from our Ugandan employed from abroad. Those are stakeholders. Then you have these NGOs. They also bring in money, but at the same time, they keep checking on government. They are to tell us that, by the way, there are these people you are leaving out. We need financial inclusion here. They keep us alerting us on where we are not doing well. So there is constant engagement, with the NGOs to make sure that we leave nobody behind in this journey. But also, there are key partners like the development partners who lend us money, because we are not able to mobilize the resources we need through taxes alone. So what we do, we go out and borrow. There are a number of people who want to borrow money, lend money to government, but their terms differ from one to another. Now, if you want concession of lending or borrowing, you go to the World Bank and IMF. Those are one of our key partners in terms of borrowing money at the most favorable terms, like 1% or less than 1%, per annum. Others would lend you money at 4.5%, which is quite high. Others can go as high as 80%. Yeah, so depending on the situation, we keep borrowing money from these different partners. And the partners are not only these who are the likes of World Bank, the banks like Stanbic, Stanchart, Citibank, we have engaged all these. A Centenary Bank, we get some of the money from the financial market. When we float bonds, we borrow from them. Individuals who establish collective schemes, they deposit money in a pool somewhere, and then they lend us this money, when we float our instruments on the market. And they earn interest. We also earn our goals, So it has been really a partnership. We have been moving together with all these key stakeholders. And we really want to encourage individuals out there that you can participate in this money economy in different ways. There's this thing that says that letting your money work for you, especially the people who are retiring or intending to retire. You don't have to sweat for money. if you have made some savings, let those savings work for you. You could be sitting at your home when your money is working for you. You know, it is the lack of financial literacy why some people don't know about some of these things. You know, you put all your money, you have 1 billion shillings, and you leave it on the account to rot, you know, on a current account, and it is rotting there. You know, you could have deposited this money where you would be earning more money. By the time you pick your 1 billion shillings, it is actually 1.1 billion. You have earned 100 million on top of that money. You know, all this is the partnership I'm talking about. Through investing that money, you're actually lending government, and you are helping government to grow the economy. And as the economy keeps growing, you are also making more and more money. The likes of NSSF, many of you contribute to the pension fund through NSSF. You think NSSF gives that money to themselves? They invest it. They lend it to the government. And you hear them at the end of every financial year, they are reporting the dividends and what they are paying out, you know, to their members, to the people who are contributing to the fund. Usually I hear them declaring 11% of your contribution, you know, and that's a lot of earning, because it is earning. It's not going to be lost in terms of value. It's adding more value because of where you saved that money. As we go along, I think we shall be having more people in this program to discuss this financial literacy, so that people understand that the age, those days where you just keep money there on a current account and you don't earn anything, and the banks keep chopping money from your savings, those days are well gone. You can keep your money somewhere where it earns you more income on a daily.
Okay. Now, other than borrowing, Honorable, are there any more mobilization strategies that are put in place to make sure that the ministry raises resources to finance the implementation process of the Vision 2040?
Other ways the ministry mobilizes resources?
Yes.
We raise money from tax revenue and non-tax revenue means. Hence the creation of the Uganda Revenue Authority to focus on collecting tax revenue. They are also helping us in terms of collecting non-tax revenue. You know, some of you go to different institutions and they tell you, you pay this fee. That's part of the non-tax revenue I'm talking about. Or you pay for this permit, this license, or that to access this. You know, it's not part of our mainstream taxes, but it's also another form of revenue. So we are talking about both tax and non-tax revenue. Now, that's our biggest source of funding. But we are not performing well in terms of our tax to GDP ratio. Ugandans continue to complain that our taxes are too much, too high. They are not necessarily too high. I think the problem is that the number, the ratio, or the percentage of people, you know, actively involved in paying tax is still small. So we need to broaden the tax base by putting more people in the tax register. We talk about a tax register. The register has hitherto been very small. You know, very few people who file returns on tax. We need to see more people. And the URA is working about this. You know, the register has expanded over the last few years. And more people are now being tasked to pay tax. We must see success in our tax administration to make sure that every Ugandan, and that's why we are talking about financial inclusion, you know, so that you produce something, and when you produce and then also buy, you are paying indirect tax on whatever you are buying. Because when you are buying, there is VAT. If you remain poor and you are not buying, we don't earn that VAT.
Okay.
That's why we are building a wealthy economy. Everybody to participate in that wealthy economy. So we want to see more people into the tax bracket. And by doing so, we reduce our level of borrowing. You know, we don't have to rely on borrowing to survive. Some countries contribute 80% of their budget through tax revenue. You know, we normally use the tax to GDP ratio. Ours has been about 13%. But sub-Saharan Africa is average, is much higher. It's over 18%. We are even still below that sub-Saharan average, you know. So which means that we are not yet at par with the expected average of 18%. And if we are able to reach 18%, then we would be able to finance over 70% of our budget. Today, we are not even 50% of our budget. The balance, we have to borrow. And when you borrow, you know you have to pay the cost of borrowing, which is interest, you know. So these are the major sources, borrowing. Yeah? Borrowing has its benefits, but it also has its disadvantages. It is a cost to the economy because we have to pay back this money. And where do we get the money we pay back? From the taxes that we pay, the revenue. Now we are in a situation where almost 40% of the revenue we collect is used to pay what? To pay our debt. So the more you borrow each year, the more the debt burden keeps increasing, and the more it consumes what you collect through your tax revenue. So it is not a very good practice to continue borrowing, because it takes away money that would ideally be using to finance the development of the country. But it has a positive side of it, which is that the lenders also include the citizens of Uganda, so that when they lend through those financial markets, the stock market, the capital market, when they lend, they also earn. You know, they earn interest and they go and do other things. You know, yes. So it has that flip side of it, and also the good side of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Honorable. Of course, the goal for this vision is to make sure that people have a higher income, a full monetization, and also to ensure that there is a social and economic transformation in the country. Now, we would want to know, it is very easy for you to sit down and draft a plan at any level, but if you do not monitor and evaluate, you will not know if you have achieved some aspects. So are there any mechanisms that have been put in place to ensure that we are doing monitoring and evaluation of these objectives that we stated in the National Development Plan?
Oh, yes. First and foremost, a national development plan, which we said helps us to implement the vision. It's a 5-year plan. And midway in the between those 5 years, that's after 2.5 years, we do what we call a mid-term review to see whether we review the plan, to check if we are consistently moving by the plan. And if we are not, where are we lagging behind? What do we need to change? That's where we effect some changes. You know, annually, there is a test of consistency between the budget we take to Parliament and the plan. The budget must be consistent with the plan. So that assessment has to be done by the National Planning Authority and the report submitted to Parliament. because it's the Parliament that provides oversight, you know. So all these are intended to check. And when the plan ends, we do evaluation of that plan to check, did we realize the objectives of that plan? Coincidentally, we also have institutions that keep monitoring, you know, the implementation of the plan on the ground. The Office of the Prime Minister is in charge of making sure that the plan is implemented. They are also in charge of monitoring to see progress on the implementation of the plan. That's their work. And that's why annually there's this GAPA conference they hold. They will tell you who is performing well, especially in terms of districts, and who is not performing well. You know, they rank them. So all these implementers are being assessed by way of performance. I cannot argue that they are all doing well. Some of them are miserably performing. There are flaws here and there. There are people who get money and, you know, mischarge that money. In other words, they do other things not intended to be done in the plan. So those people are found through that process. We have institutions like ISO. They are also quietly doing their intelligence work on the economy. We have a ministry in charge of economic plan, monitoring in the office of the president. They are also monitoring. There's actually a lot of monitoring, even within the Ministry of Finance. We have BAMAU, the Budget Monitoring Working Group, a whole department, you know, that is in charge of monitoring the implementation of the projects that we finance in the budget to make sure that they happen. We also have the Auditor General who files the final audit report at the end of each year. They take it direct to Parliament, you know, before we even look at it, to report who is misdirecting money, who is misusing money, who is not implementing. You know, the mechanisms are there to monitor the implementation of the plan. Also, we created what we call the internal audit. You know, in every ministry, every department of government, there's an internal auditor. Before money is spent, to check if it's meant, the money being released is meant for that particular purpose. So when the internal auditor authorizes, then actually the money is in accordance with the plan. But even with the existence of those, you find flaws, you know, and this is where people like the IGG comes in to say, hey, you, what is this you are doing? And that's how you see some people end up in jail.
Okay, so you mentioned that, of course, after review, you could identify some sectors are not performing and others are performing. Just highlights for, you know, someone out there who needs to know in a few details. What are some of the indicators they're using to measure performance in these sectors? And once they have found out a deviation in the intended objectives and outcomes, what is to be done by the ministry? If they find out that the objectives that we were supposed to, you know, achieve by maybe the first 10 years, we have not achieved this, what is has been put in place by the ministry such that they can change direction in the implementation process?
In the NDP, for example, we have developed an implementation plan. In the implementation plan, you specify the intervention identified in the plan. Then you identify the key activities under that intervention. For example, if I take agro-industrialization, agro-industrialization simply talks about agriculture and industries within the agro sector. Now, you may have a program, for instance, to fight animal diseases, and that is the intervention. Animal diseases like which one? Foot and mouth disease.
Okay.
Among the key activities, you are saying I'll be buying vaccines, you know. So you indicate how much vaccines are going to be procured. And you indicate the amount of money which we allocate you in that particular financial year.
Okay.
Now the monitoring person will come and look at this intervention. The intervention is fighting animal disease, particularly foot and mouth disease, FMD. You said you are going to be buying vaccines. Did you get the money? Yes, I got the money. Did you buy the vaccines? Yes, I bought. Oh, I didn't buy. Why didn't you buy? This and that. Oh, you have no answer. Then that's where they catch you. You see the point? That's when they get you. Because some of these people, then instead of buying the vaccine, he goes and buys a vehicle. And we call that mischarge. Okay. A vehicle, yes, is useful for the ministry. That the money was not meant for the vehicle. Come on. You say someone diverting money for vaccines and taking it to pay wage that I employed this person, I didn't have money. No, the money was not meant for that. You're mischarging the money, you know. And so that person then is identified in the audit report, you know, that is not doing this. And action then is required because the internal auditor reports. The external auditor, who is the auditor general, also reports. But there are people who are supposed to take action on the people who are not properly utilizing the money, you know. Now, that's where sometimes we fail. On the audit report, it is Parliament, largely Parliament, in the IGG, you know, and people like that, the anti-corruption agencies. Then internal audit, you know, they report a problem before it happens. So when that happens, they have to reprimand the people who are misbehaving. So the entire system is there. We have developed a huge book, it's right there on my table, you know, indicating what to do, how to do it, the key activities, the key indicators have been indicated. You know, measurable indicators. We have even gone ahead to say, if you are going to procure FMD, so much vaccines. So the question will be very clear to that person. Did you get the money? Yes. Did you buy this amount of vaccine? Yes. Then a tick is put. Now, there's also the application of the vaccine. Did you deploy the vaccine? That may not, it is expected, of course. And this is when you are evaluating. You know, did the vaccine reach the intended targets? The answer may be, it did not. There was a time when I was still actively very active in Parliament. They bought vaccines, they kept them in stores, they expired. They were not deployed. Money was spent, the vaccine. If you are checking for financial expenditure, yes, vaccines were bought. But did they work? Were they delivered to the farmers? Were the animals injected with the FMD vaccine? You know, I'm just giving this as an example, you know, for people to understand what we do. Because the government spends money on various things. And this is just simply one example. If drugs for human beings, national medical stores procures drugs, you know, we have to check, do they buy the drug? So the agency, like the Auditor General, are there to check all this, where these things done. That's why it is independent of government, you know, and reports to Parliament directly for accountability. When you go to Parliament, there are those things, committees called PAC. Are they working to their best, to their optimal standards? The answer could be yes, it could be no. You know, if they don't really deal with the people who are reported to have misused the funds. Yeah. So this is how the system works in a whole.
Okay, so for the next implementation plan, what are the ministry's priorities?
Our ministry's priorities, we have a program called DPI, and that is the Development Plan Implementation Program. Within the plan, because that plan has various programs. The Development Plan Implementation is meant to ensure that the plan is implemented to the letter. It's a group involving this ministry, involving Prime Minister's office, because the Prime Minister is also, it's kind of a governance for the plan, to make sure that the plan happens in the various programs. Are we providing the resources? Are the various programs implementing what they are meant to implement? What are the challenges? Then we try to look for solutions. Because for us, we come from largely the financing, treasury, tax policy bit of it. We have to make sure that the right tax policy is in place, you know, so that we collect enough revenue. We have to make sure that, we participate in monitoring to see if what we are doing happens. We are supposed to make sure that there is price stability, no inflation, through the central bank, you know, and through making sure that there is an adequate production. So we are meant to ensure that there is stability in the economy, so that everything else can happen. Now, that's priority, to make sure that the plan is properly and adequately implemented. And the first element to get the plan implemented is to have the money, which this ministry provides. So I was here to make sure we have enough money within the treasury to implement the plan. Then others also have their their own tasks. The Office of Prime Minister is supposed to coordinate the implementation. So we sit together, those who are supposed to coordinate implementation, OPM, with us, who are supposed to provide the money. They allocate the money. We gather and discuss where are the problems, and we continue giving more energy into those areas. So that, I think, is the number one element within the plan. Because there are so many people for whom we borrow money. And in borrowing that money, we need a counterpart funding. Counterpart is a contribution from government on top of what we have borrowed, say, from World Bank. Sometimes, if the counterpart funding doesn't come, even the World Bank money cannot be used. The donor will not allow you to use his unless yours comes. Some projects stall because counterpart funding has not been provided. So we need to be monitoring all these things. Which project is not moving as a result of lack of counterpart funding? Or which project is so key but is not funded? You know, it's not happening. Among all these projects, which are the priority projects we need to start with? You know? Now, key policy programs like PDM, we make sure that there's money for PDM, you know, 1.3 trillion every year. That money has got to be there because of financial inclusion. We know that's a stimulant to the general economic growth of the country. So that's the kind of role we cut out for ourselves. But then the individual programs have to do their part also. I've been talking about agro-industrialization program, comprising institutions like Ministry of Agriculture, the National Research Organizations in Agriculture. It comprises the likes of Ministry of Trade and Industry. You know, all those come together and discuss. This agricultural produce we make, we put there. Do we add value? How do we add value? Who is going to add value? Those are expected to be sitting to discuss, you know. And, you know, there are so many things we put into the plan. We prioritize, we choose what are going to be our key priorities. You know, within government, we say construction of the standard gauge rail line is very key to reduce the cost of transporting goods. because the train that has been moving for 3 days from Mombasa, then will move within 1 day. What a saving.
Yeah.
You know, it reduces the cost of transportation to the private sector. So you'll see the private sector becoming even more agile in producing more and more, because we have reduced the cost of transport, energy. People are crying about utility tariffs. You know, we have to respond to that with the priorities by producing more energy at the lowest cost possible. Before you remember, we are using private sector to produce energy. Bujagari is fresh in your mind. But the cost of energy from Bujagari, because they have to make profit, you know, is high. And we have very little influence on that tariff. So what did we decide? The moment we realized that private sector energy is very costly, we said now government must intervene directly. So we went and built Isimba. We have recently launched Karuma. And that has helped to lower the cost. Umeme was here. We said when the contract expired, we are not renewing because they have not been investing back into the energy sector. So we now have our own agency, Uganda Electricity Distribution Company Limited. So there's a lot of work in the plan that we have to do to make sure that things happen. People just see things happening, but they don't know that there are people in the kitchen. You know, of course, led by His Excellency, the President himself. He keeps showing us the direction, you know, on what to do. We come back, analyze, you know, give him feedback on how it could work best, you know, and then we discuss in cabinet, set policies for these things, you know. So that's how we operate.
But Honorable, as we are closing, could you give us your closing remarks to Ugandans? How can Ugandans out there, especially those who are watching us, contribute to the national vision 2040 in a summary?
Yeah, in short, we need peace and stability.
Okay.
And it is us as Ugandans to make or break it. You know, if we aspire to become a prosperous country, we need to remain peaceful, but also need to be productive. Everybody must find something to do. Whatever you do in terms of production, goods and services, whether you're in agriculture, in services, you're contributing to the wealth of this country. You're helping to expand the GDP of this country. And the more GDP we get, the higher the per capita level of our income. And the higher per capita income is what takes us to the middle income economy that we are talking about. So I'm calling upon the Ugandans to play their part of being a peaceful country, of being a productive society. Everybody should participate. We are tired of looking at these people who are just producing for their stomach. Money has been pushed out there through the PDM. Be active. Go for it. Don't sit back and wait for the money to look for you. Go and look for that money. Come up with an idea of what to do. And together, we shall build our country, Uganda.
That is well said by Honorable Amos Lugolobi, the State Minister for Finance and Planning here at Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. I am Jackie Lingla, always updating you of what is happening in the economy on the Financial High every Monday, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Till next time, next week, stay tuned on Race TV. A very good evening.
The Financial Eye, making finance clear. No complicated terms, just the economy explained. The Financial Eye. See the economy.